So my name is Christina Cartagena, and I do, well, numerous things in the blockchain space. However, for the focus of today's talk, I'm going to be talking about how we could empower the adoption of blockchain technologies, specifically via two tracks, okay? The first has to do with democratizing development using something called the low-code automation platform, which I'll get into that in a little bit. And the second path has to do with helping to onboard other crypto-curious people, which honestly, one of the best ways to do that is via the community, right? And what's a better place for a community than events, such as, Crypto Monday is going on right here.
Excellent. So I love to start with just kind of your crypto story. It's kind of a thing people do. When did you get into Bitcoin? How did you get into Bitcoin? Why does this whole space even interest you? For me, I got involved in January 2013. I spent $50 and I got 2.5 Bitcoin. They were $20 a piece. So I got in pretty early. I was pretty excited about it. I was involved in the payment space with a e-commerce company I started called FoxyCart. And from there, the last 9+ years, it's been an amazing journey. I've been involved in lots of stuff. How did you get into cryptocurrency? What was your first story of finding out about Bitcoin, this crazy, weird internet money that nobody really believed in?
So first story, I was at University of Central Florida, and I was taking a cybersecurity class. And this was kind of around in August 2013 or so right around the times that Silk Road shenanigans are going on. I'm in the CS class, and I think to myself, dang, what is this Bitcoin thing? This is not okay. This is just money laundering. This is sketchy.
Fake internet money you mine on your computer. It was this can't be real. It was me 2011, 2012. I was like, this is silly. This is no way.
Exactly. I mean, at the time, I was really into Super Smash Brothers, and that was a reward. Was third place would be 100 Bitcoin, and then first place would be $1,000. So, I definitely saw Bitcoin initially as a problem. So I actually started writing a paper at the time called "When Bits Bite Back." Fast forward about 3 years later, and my entire perception really changed on Bitcoin and the crypto industry overall.
I actually saw an interview with Michael Saylor and Ren and a bunch of it, I think the Wolf of Wall Street. There was a little clip, and they were talking about, he was going through the list of all these people who were completely against Bitcoin initially, and now are totally on board. And these are major financial movers and shakers. It's not an uncommon process where at first you're like, what is this? It's rat poison, whatever. And then you get into it a little further. It's oh my gosh, this is going to change the world. I got to get behind this. So that's 2015, 2016 kind of time? 2016. And then what happened next? Where did your career go from there, and then lead that into what you're doing now?
Oof. Okay, so where my career went from there, honestly, I was focused more kind of on a private investor point of view. The time I was doing a lot of marketing, actually healthcare marketing, stuff with the FDA, with medical devices, stuff that you wouldn't think is related to crypto, yet strangely it all circles back, right? And that's one of the things that I love about blockchain and technology as an industry in general is it could be applied to every single industry. Fast forward, I guess, to present day or even a couple years back, started a technology firm called Architectura Technologies. We started initially doing a lot of smart contract dev work and website development. And now that's actually has shifted to being mostly crypto marketing and event marketing. Because as you know, the community is the basis of everything when it comes to crypto. If you're not able to build that, then you really ultimately have nothing.
So one of the things I talk about often is the difference between, in cryptocurrency, you have these different layers. You have layer 1, which is your major security model, usually proof of work, proof of stake, delegated proof of stake. Then you have something called layer 2, which is usually a performance layer. This is optimistic rollup or ZK Snarks. They make things cheaper, faster, better. But there's also this layer 0, which is the number of human beings that actually believe in what you're doing and think it's worth their time and attention to put their money and their time and their resources into. And it really comes down to that. It's the number of people that actually hear about what you're doing. Is why marketing is important. And lots of times developers like myself are kind of the marketers, what are they doing? We're the actual builders. We're making code. But actually, if nobody knows about it and it doesn't actually impact a human life, then what's the point? So you got into it from a marketing perspective, but also with kind of a dev focus originally. Interesting. So why don't you lead into what are you doing specifically with the dev? I mean, I've heard of is this kind of the what they call them, the third format of languages where you don't actually have to code, but you can drag and drop.
So
Wolfram is an example, right?
So a better example would be maybe something like Appian, Pega. Any of those would be what are called low-code automation platforms. So the one that I'm working with is called AgilePoint. AgilePoint specifically uses what's called the metadata abstraction layer. So how that works is pretty much instead of coding, right, instead of having to write all this mumble jumble, actually you just get to visually do it, kind of what looks like workflow processes. And how it works is nothing is ever translated to code. Everything stays in the metadata, which allows you to just extend any type of application that you want via, quite frankly, point and click.
So to kind of put this in context, so we hear, it's like I started building websites in 1996, and I got involved in all the internet.com craziness, and it was like every company in the world had to figure out how are we going to get an email address, how are we going to get a website, how are we going to figure out this whole programming thing of the internet, what is internet, where is internet, all that kind of stuff. And we're kind of in that place now. What is your NFT strategy? What's your blockchain strategy? How are you going to get your smart contracts to, different things you have to do with your vendors and suppliers and customers and employees to make everything transparent? How are you going to tokenize it with a, let's say a loyalty model, something like that? So you're saying that you have a platform where people can enter into this space without having all the technical background, literally dragging and dropping visual components that say, we want the user to do this, which is going to cause this thing to happen. And then there's this automated thing that happens over here, which is going to result in some blockchain activity. So what kind of blockchains does it work with? How does this work?
So this currently only supports a Solidity connector, so it's only working with Ethereum right now. The reason why Ethereum was chosen as a focal point was, if anyone knows, back in 2019, the Ethereum created what's known as the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance and also the Token Taxonomy Framework, which is widely adopted now by about over 150 major enterprises. So AgilePoint serving a lot of these Fortune 500s, it just made sense for us to move forward with Ethereum first. However, we're also looking at changing things on an infrastructure level, right, to, of course, support interoperability, as that's one of the biggest pain points in crypto and blockchain.
Completely agree. Considering I'm the managing director for the Foundation for Inter-Wallet Operability, completely agree. Being able to work with simple interfaces, simple things that make sense is really, really important. And because a lot of this stuff is frankly just way too confusing. It's kind of like the early internet days. People are typing these commands to figure stuff out. It wasn't until you have this user experience that's palatable and easy to understand and accessible that people are like, oh yeah, internet, kind of like AOL and these other things kind of made it accessible. So how long have you been with them? Are you just doing marketing with them, or what's your involvement specifically with this organization?
So I am doing blockchain advising, kind of, gearing all of that. We can't formally make the announcement on the development side of things just quite yet, but the Solidity connector is live. Everybody here could actually get a free trial and start, configuring with it. And then, yes, also supporting on a marketing front.
Does that mean that, so even now, you said it's not exactly live, but you could tinker with it. You could actually start doing visual programming to create smart contracts?
Yeah, actually, if I had any type of visuals that could be supported here, I would walk you guys through a demo. But
that's amazing. So, for example, if somebody wants to do a token or they want to do an NFT and they want to say, I want to program this NFT that if the user does this action, something else happens, could you do that kind of stuff?
Currently, right now, it's more so for extending processes and connecting them to smart contracts. Think of a use case being like supply chain, okay? You have a lot of different vendors. How are you going to trust them? How are you going to authenticate them? So a lot of times, enterprises, like I said, multiple different vendors. Maybe it's even in a bid war. Who's going to be, the shipping supplier that we go with in this instance? Or maybe we have to try, a pandemic happens, okay? Who go figures, right? So what do we have to do in that case? Maybe we have to go and start sourcing something completely different. In that event, again, how am I going to trust them? So you could extend a current, shipping supply process that you have, that you've been engaged with maybe a different subsidiary or different type of entity, and then just apply that to the new one by extending the platform with blockchain with smart contracts.
That's fantastic. I'm really excited to check that out, and I think that's important for, again, we're trying to build open finance. We're trying to build all these tools where you can be your own bank and have access to this new economy and these new systems. But if it's too complicated, if it takes, computer science degree or something like that, then you're not going to have as much adoption. You're not going to have as much serendipity of people doing cool things that you hadn't thought of before without tools like this. So very cool. Glad to hear about it.
I think, too, when it comes to blockchain, people always complain oh, the UI, the UX is terrible. Oh, I can't figure out how to do this, that, the other. And they start blaming the developers. It's actually not the developers' fault. It's a traditional paradigm that we continually keep repeating, okay? Honestly, it makes no sense how it is that hardware has advanced so much, yet software is still being done with traditional code. So really, I think, founder of GitHub, I can't recall his name right now, Chris something, couldn't have said it better when he said, the future of coding is not coding at all. And that's what I think we have to focus on, is if we're actually able to democratize things, then we'll be able to decentralize it better. So it's ironic to me, actually, that we're decentralizing everything, but yet it's still centralized with the people who are actually able to do that. So in order for there to be true decentralization, which ultimately leads us to, a democratic system, all these DAOs coming into play, this, that, right? We actually need to democratize the development process.
And as someone who started his career as a software engineer, I'm not threatened by that at all. I think that's actually makes perfect sense.
And that's the thing too, actually. A lot of IT folks think, oh, well, this is going to, take away my job, and they start to get threatened by it. You shouldn't feel threatened. You should feel empowered, because the reality is we will always need the IT specialists, especially when it comes to setting these governance guardrails and monitoring everything. IT is not being eliminated. We're simply just expanding, and we're just alleviating some of those bottlenecks so that IT could actually focus on, what really matters.
I think that goes along with that. A lot of people in this community are pretty excited about self-sovereign control of value, self-sovereign control of your own identity, your data, things of that nature. And I have a little bit of a concern as a very technical person with a technical background that there's some things that are too complicated for me to figure out. And I'm like, okay, we might be getting away, and this is arguable as well, getting away from a plutocracy where those with all the money make all the rules, because now we're decentralizing all the financial systems. Anyone can create their own token, do their own community. But then we get into a place where, are we creating a technocracy where only a very tiny number of people have the technical capacity to do something? So I think this leads in really well to the other point you wanted to talk about tonight, which is the importance of mass adoption. So we're now making things a little bit easier, which is pretty cool. So then how do we get people into this? How do they know about this? This is kind of like the early internet days, but unlike the internet, this is actually the largest wealth transfer that the world has ever known. This is the old financial system that was done with centralized control kind of going away, and a democratized, decentralized financial system where anyone can participate. Anyone can come together in a neighborhood and say, hey, do you want to create a token? Yeah, let's create a token. All right, we have a token, and we can start doing economies, because financial value is just shared storytelling. Anyone can tell stories now as long as they have the tools to do it. So I have some perspectives on mass adoption with like Field Protocol and what we're doing to try to make crypto easier, human readable addresses and stuff. But what's your thoughts on mass adoption? How do we get people to, one, know about this, care about it, and then feel it's accessible to them?
Two things: community and education. I think that's fundamentally what it comes down to. If people don't even know the type of gains that crypto and blockchain technology could bring you, why would they even be interested to trying to figure out how to, set up MetaMask?
So how do you do that? How do you help people understand that this is important in their lives?
So something that I have been fixated on with my partner, Bruno, I think sitting somewhere in the back here, there we go, is throwing events, stuff like this right here. So Bruno and I actually have an event company called Miami Crypto Experience. It was last year named one of the top 5 NFT events by Forbes. We only had 2 events, but both of them sold out, which as an event company, doing that right away is pretty difficult. So thankfully there was good marketing behind it.
It was a great event. We were sponsors. We had a big old thing in the back, and I got to speak there as well. It was a fantastic event.
Yeah. So I think doing stuff like that really ultimately helps. But again, it's not making a conference, though. Conferences are boring, okay? We're not looking to make a conference. We're looking to make an experience, something people actually remember and take home with them. Because if you could elicit a feeling in somebody, they will remember that feeling a heck of a lot more than the guide that you gave them on setting up whatever it is.
I felt that immediately. When you guys put on that conference, there was like sound bowls and healing, and there was a musical entertainment. Juju did an incredible job, who lives here now. And it was just kind of like, whoa, they're creating an experience. They're not just kidding about that. I thought that was really cool. And you mentioned also Crypto Curious and some other different like local ways that we can help educate people. You want to talk about that a little bit? How can we bring our local communities, our neighbors, our friends to be like, hey, here's something that's accessible for you to show up and learn something about this?
So, of course, word of mouth, but even small things that we could all do. For example, I've gotten into the habit of tipping, my nail person or my hairstylist, honestly, in crypto. And if they don't have a wallet, then here, I'll go ahead and make that for you. And you'll be surprised. People, when you tell them, hey, could I tip you in Bitcoin? They're, huh? What? They kind of freak out about it. But honestly, that's like one very small change that we could all do at an incremental level. But I think, like I said, it comes down to this networking, this community building. So part of the community building now, Miami Crypto Experience has actually partnered with Layer 1 Events, which is Michael Turpin's new company. Michael Turpin brings, a great block of leaders to our event who are going to be educating. We definitely bring in a lot of the new people. But really what we're doing that's different here, right, is aside from the fun experiences like having fight nights and having raves that we bus you to, and actually Bored Ape Yacht Party for this one, we're also have invested heavily in a networking application. So actually if you sign up for the event, in a couple days you'll get mailed the link to an app and you can start networking with people. You can start setting your meetings because again, we want this to not be just like a conference. We want you to actually be gaining value. We want you to find your next business partner here. We want you to raise capital here. We want to be able to actually facilitate growth for you. Not just, hey, I came here and saw some people speak.
One of the things that I tell my team often is that all business is a relationship. And this is something that's really important, and it's very easy to get confused by this. I'll use today as an example. I had a call scheduled, and it was scheduled so long ago that I forgot the context of the call. And so I jumped on the Zoom, and I was like, oh, hey, could you please remind me of the context? And like, oh, our friend Ravi connected. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And Ravi went to school with these guys and knows them very well, and they're out of a group in India, and they have a KYC identity platform, and they've served 600 million users. And it was just through the relationships, and he just kept saying, oh, you're friends with Ravi. By the end of the call, they're like, we want to make you an advisor for what we're doing. And that's completely because of those relationships. Where did I meet Ravi? Here. I met Ravi here at Crypto Mondays. He was passing through, and it was years ago, and we just stayed in touch because we had a way to stay in touch. We ended up becoming Facebook friends and just had deep conversations about consciousness and all these beautiful things. And so we became friends outside of just the context of business. And out of that, they knew they could trust the conversation with me, and there was that kind of shared rapport. And then today even, I had so much fun with the phone call. I introduced them to another group, and they're all excited to work together. And it's all about relationships. And so big part of Crypto Mondays is just coming here, hanging out, connecting with people, building relationships, building rapport, finding out what you enjoy together, even outside of this space, not just like business traditionally. So that's super exciting. I think that's super important. I really appreciate what you're doing. I think we'll probably keep it a little bit shorter tonight. I know you guys were here to do exactly that, build relationships, build community. We always do audience questions as well, so let's go ahead and start that. If you have any questions for Christina, unless you have anything else you want to touch on?
No, I don't think so. If anybody has any, there we go, question back
All
there.
right, I guess I'll be the mic butler if that's cool. Or do you want to, anyone else want to run the mic? We got a separate mic. Here we go. Anyone run that? You want to run the mic?
The host was talking about use case scenarios like building tokens and other things, and you said you gave the use case example. Are you going to move towards that? What's the plans for, or are you going to stay it is right now?
Yeah, definitely. So reiterating that question, essentially, will the ActionPoint technology be moving towards the future to allow you to completely just start making the contract with low code? And the answer to that is yes. That is definitely something on the radar. For right now, though, it pretty much works by extending existing applications that you have. You can also use this platform to build any application you want via drag and drop, and via that extension is how you could support the blockchain enablement.
Any other questions on community, mass adoption, kind of this like how to code if you're not a coder, anything along those lines? Got one over here. Mic's on your way.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Christina. I mean, this is such an education. I asked you twice about a certain segment of the structure you was talking about. I had to ask you twice because I've never heard it before. And at 59, this is such an advance in technology because it's about connecting blocks also to some degree, yes?
In layman's terms, yes, we connect the blocks.
And it's just weird to me how READ has something fundamentally to do with this. And I'm learning from Luke, like there's such articulation in the way he puts trust together and community and how we all share in the knowledge of. And Christina, again, thank you. The way you're just able to explain it, like pinpoint accuracy is like, wow, this is like boom, I get it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And then how simple you say how it will be to learn it if we're trying to keep it simple, stupid, so to speak. And the reading, I've never read so much in the past 5 years just with blockchain alone and the decentralization, the DeFi, and what it truly means. Some type of freedom, I guess, And I'm just so happy to be here to be able to share it with y'all. And if everybody knew their team and the teamwork going into this, we're going to have some fun here in a couple of years, I'm telling you. Thanks again, Luke. I mean, this is just
You're very welcome.
astronomical.
Thank you.
That is
Appreciate
the goal. I mean, I talk about blockchains as a tool for global nonviolent consensus. This is a mechanism for humans to determine what's true without having to use the old systems that were, again, centralized or controlled by plutocracies, things of that nature. But in order to do that, we have to democratize access to these tools and the ability to build on these systems and actually bring in education.
Because if not, we will just continue repeating the same mistake over and over again. So, actually it's sad, but the more we decentralize, we could actually be centralizing ourselves more, because then all of that data now, the amount of data that's being held on us is actually far more than anything you could have ever imagined. So, double-edged sword. Let's democratize that doesn't happen.
Any other questions while we have Christina here? And we got one way in the back there. So are you primarily based in Miami, or are you coming here to Puerto Rico as well? Or
Kind of based all over the place, I guess. Technically, right? Home is Jacksonville right now, but looks like I'll be moving to New York at the end of May, but also getting a place in Brickell. So kind of back and forth, New York, Miami, also Puerto Rico, also San Fran. Yeah.
Excellent. Go ahead in the back there.
Yeah, thank you. So this is my first time ever being here in Crypto Mondays.
Welcome.
Thank you. I've never come before. I don't know a lot about crypto, so I'm very interested in the whole concept. My primary question would be, right, somebody who's interested in, right, I guess not participating in these systems, that are just set in stone, and it's very difficult for anybody like innovate or anything like that. How does one continue to back up, something like cryptocurrency or NFTs or Bitcoin, since it's, it's essentially, right, it's an invisible token that you give value to, and, it's just a hard idea to get your head around, and how does one, continue to support and sponsor these kinds of, structures where, anybody can just, decide to get interested in it, and if you want to, you can just build it up.
Okay, so repeating the question there. So the question being, how is it that we could support blockchain initiatives, essentially?
Yes, that's one thing. I'm interested in just knowing how blockchain works in general. My understanding is it's kind of like a structure, right, that allows Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies to operate. But just how is it viable in the long term? If it's not a physical currency, or if it's not something you can feel and touch, something you can actually offer to people, how is it going to be viable in the future?
Well, I think you could ask that question about any commodity, really. Let's take gold, for example. What is it that's giving gold the value? Well, it's the fact that we decided to assign some value to it. The reason why, and I'll go with Bitcoin specifically on this one, the reason why Bitcoin is so beautiful is because it's something that has a more predictable value. Predictable in the sense that we always know what's going to happen with the supply. We always know the halving cycle. It's basically currency that can't be manipulated. While gold or something like that, I mean, it can be. Look at all that's happened throughout history. So, with that being said, I think really the best thing that could be done is work on educating yourself on this industry. It's nothing that's going away anytime soon. And actually, I read a statistics today that 83 countries are launching and working on stablecoins, representing 90% of the total GDP in the world.
Wow. That's amazing. I love the question, by the way. It reminds me of my questions in 2013. I was like, how is this real? This is fake internet money. Like, I don't get it. What backs this? And what I realized is that what's amazing about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is it actually gets people to ask, what is money? They spend 8+ hours a day away from their family, away from leisure activity, earning money, and most of them don't know what it is. They've never actually spent the time to figure out what fiat currency is, by government decree currency, not backed by anything since 1971, the Nixon shock, and then prior to that, you can go in 1944 Bretton Woods, and like you study the history of central banking and money, and it's a really scary thing to realize, like, holy moly, this whole thing's a Ponzi scam, and it's actually just like made up BS. And a bunch of people got together and said, let's do that. Okay. And the idea that financial value is actually shared storytelling. If the stories are agreed upon by enough people, then it becomes real. And when the story breaks down, it's literally trash in the street. You've seen the pictures in Venezuela, Argentina, places where it's like not even worth picking up. These I have a $1 trillion note in my house as a reminder from, I think, I don't know for which country, Zimbabwe or something like that. So the idea behind cryptocurrency is that we all know it's fake. We all know the entire thing is fake. There is no such thing as intrinsic value. It's just what we believe. Value isn't something defined outside of the human experience. So then we just say, let's just own that and make it transparent and accessible to anyone. Meaning the rules are clear. There's no large aircraft carrier owning country that gets to come in and say, here's the rules, do what we say or else. It's actually like, here's the rules, and they're open. And you can do a pull request to change the rules. And if the world agrees and all the nodes agree, you can do a hard fork or a soft fork and you can make changes. The supply, as you said, is completely consistent and known. There's no like $1 trillion that just shows up one day and that's actually seigniorage that goes to certain people but everyone else gets screwed. Inflation is basically theft. And there's all these mechanisms in the current system that once you start learning about it, you get to the point where like, holy moly, this is the best ledger ever invented. Therefore, it's the best form of money ever invented because money has always been a ledger, a mechanism for keeping track of credits and debits. Anyway, I go on and on. I love that question. It's a great question. Yeah. So it's a good way to kind of start your education. Like, why does this matter? Like, dive in deeper. Like, how's this going to work? Dive in deeper. There's some great resources out there. Way easier to understand it today than back, in 2013 where there was no resources. There's great resources out there now. Any other questions before we close up?
Hey there. Yeah, we got one more back in the back. Metaverse experiences. So that's on your Instagram. You're putting together a party that's not in the metaverse, but crossing over. You got things like meta mansions coming out. What do you see as coming down the pipeline, or what do you envision happening in both of those spaces that you'd like to see or are going to do?
Yeah, so in the metaverse, I think we're still very far off from achieving a true metaverse. A true metaverse means that, I don't know, if I'm in Halo and I grab a gun and then I bring it into Call of Duty, then I would be able to do that, right? That's very far off. However, what I do see right now on like the present day of metaverse is actually intraverse, okay? Which intraverse is referring to people kind of creating like their own sub-metaverses, if that could be a word. So that's where I see the present day, but I think, the greater vision is as I described, where everything is actually fluid and going with each other. That would be our end goal, which we're still pretty far off from that.
that gets back to the interoperability word.
Yeah, that would be like 2030 or so that it's predicted that we'll actually finally be able to do that. And at which point, the World Wide Web will then be not World Wide Web, but worldwide distributed ledger.
Exactly. And with that, too, there's you hinted on this earlier. You're still going to need the experts to set up governance systems and even, oracles to figure out what value is and bridging between different systems. And there's times where it's like, okay, that person minted that NFT in-game and it was really hard to do, but if they could just transfer it over to another game, does that change the value within the interoperability between the systems? So there's actually one of the things that I love about cryptocurrency, and it was said earlier, you could read more than you ever have as you dive in the rabbit hole, is that you're going to learn about philosophy, motivational psychology, macro and microeconomics. You're going to learn about technology. You're going to learn about distributed systems and networks. And there's just so much to understand here. But thankfully, we got an amazing community here to answer those questions. I want to leave plenty of time for us to network, unless there's any other burning question that we got to answer. Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Excellent. So we're going to close out here. I'm going to end this on a little bit of a down note, unfortunately, but I didn't want to lead with this. For those who are core members of our community, we did have a community member that we just found out passed away last night. And I just want to go ahead and do a moment of silence for Matt. And let's just sit for a second. Thank you for that. there's a lot of hurting people in the community, and today's been a tough day for a lot of people processing that and trying to figure out how they can help in different ways. So if that's you, if you're connected to that, definitely connect to the community. We're here for each other. And this has been going on through WhatsApp all day today and in other places in person as well. So if you need help, definitely see Isaac, see his wife, see myself, see anyone in the community, and we can help you out with that. Sorry to end on the downer, but that's part of community as well. You get the ups and the downs. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you, Christina, so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you so much, Luke.
And really appreciate seeing you all. There's so many new faces. It's amazing. This community continues to grow. It's really incredible. And we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.
Thank you all.